Hi everyone, this is James Jackson here, and today I'm taking a little break. I got a little bit of time out from work, so I'm out in midday on top of my roof, but I feel like I wanted to just change pace. Just like Sony has doing a little change of pace with their cameras in terms of announcing it in the middle of the night. Sony has just announced the A7R III, or also known as the A7R III. So I wanted to do a little video, not necessarily on the camera itself, because as I've said in many of my videos, I am more of a videographer. No, not more, I am a videographer. I'm not really into photography, and I feel like it would be irresponsible of me to make any critique or my thoughts on the photography side of this camera. And the photography side is the clear highlight feature of this camera. So I'm not necessarily going to go into the A7R III and its features that way. However, what I am going to talk about with the camera is how it's going to relate to a camera I think many of us in the video world feel about another camera, which is that we're anticipating, which is the A7S III. And some excitements that are coming out of this camera that I'm excited about potentially for the A7S, as well as some concerns in terms of how it fits in the market currently, especially with cameras like the GH5 that I'm shooting on. So let's go into some of the video features. I think so people that use the A7R II before are not going to be surprised by face detection is in there again. For me, what's going to be exciting is that it's almost certain that Sony is going to put phase detection into the Sony A7S III, which will make it an autofocus monster. To me, it's a foregone conclusion. It's going to be in there. It's going to definitely be a camera that's worth keeping notice of, especially since, let's be honest, autofocus on the GH5 is not the best features on it by any stretch. But the things that I am most excited about is the supposedly increase in dynamic range in the A7R III, which is supposed to go up to about 15 stops, which is fantastic if that is true. That is the most exciting thing, because to me, what makes great images cinematic is not necessarily the resolution or the shallow depth of field or high frame rates, bokeh, and anything like that. What really captures or helps create a digital cinematic image is high dynamic range. So supposedly potentially having the A7S III go up to 15 stops is a fantastic feature. The other thing that I'm excited about is this new wave that really was kicked off with the GH5 in terms of the small camera market, the consumer prosumer market, which is now the addition of hybrid log gamma. Now, you see my video before. I did a little part 1 on how to set up hybrid log gamma on the GH5. If you haven't, I'll leave a link in the description below. But it's a nice, really great feature to have to really push the technologies of what we're capable of. It gives a chance for those who have the ability to view content on high definition, high dynamic range monitors and TVs. It's a great tool to have. So especially, it seems like this is the next step in the media and technology world, is the proceeding into HDR content. So very excited about that. So in the A7R, it now includes the ability to record HLG, which is on the GH5 with the recent firmware update. So I think this is going to be a trend in a lot of cameras coming forth, is that there's not, and it looks like HLG is going to be, at the moment, it looks like HLG is sort of winning this battle of HDR format or HDR coding battle that's sort of going on with HDR10, HLG, Dolby's version, so on and so forth. It looks like HLG is sort of becoming the more common practice HDR form, but we'll see. I also have my concerns with features video-wise with the A7R II. One of those things is that there is no 10-bit, and I know a lot of people are sort of expecting it to be the A7S to have 10-bit, and as well as 4K 60p, and I'm not exactly sure about that right now. And the reason why I say that is because historically, the A7R and the A7S, they come out around the same time, number one, but also in terms of feature video highlights, they're pretty much shared between the two. There's some differences in terms of sensor size, whether if they're better at full frame video content or Super 35 content, the ISO difference, but those are like more sub features instead of the key features like resolution, frame rates, bit depth, color depth. You know, all those are very shared. And what's sort of disappointing with the A7R Mark III is that it's still 8-bit 420, and there's no 4K 60. So, and what concerns me is that we're probably going to see the same thing with the A7S, where there's no 4K 60 internally and no 10-bit 422 recording. I'm not necessarily completely writing off 4K 60. I think it's definitely a possibility. However, I will not be surprised if there's no 10-bit. I'm almost certain that there isn't going to be 10-bit 422 4K. Maybe 10-bit 422 1080. And that's more have to do for me with the codec, because as of right now, XAVC-S is by design an 8-bit codec. The next codec up is the XAVC-L, which, if I remember correctly, it doesn't do 4K 10-bit. It does full HD 10-bit 422, but not 10-bit. Now, if I'm wrong, correct me. If I'm wrong, please leave a comment and just let me know. I could be wrong, but as far as I know, it doesn't do 10-bit 422 4K. The only one that does do that is XAVC-I. And the problem with XAVC-I is it requires a massive amount of files sizes and a massive amount of storage and media, because it takes up so much space. It's great overall for post work because it doesn't put your computer as much work, but it's a lot of storage. And mostly Sony, the only ones that does that is like the FS7 and up, and those codecs use XQD, which, based on what I see on the A7R II and the A9, those media cards are way too big to fit on the A7S. So I would not be surprised that Sony comes out and announces the A7S Mark III and it has no 10-bit 422 whatsoever. And you know what? I wouldn't even be surprised if Sony comes out and announces after the A7S Mark III, they announce an A9S with a bigger body, a much bigger body, and then decides that one puts out 4K 60 and that one uses 10-bit 422 and does use the US Class 2 SD cards that is basically what we use now, whereas the A7R and the A7S, they only use Class 2 on one slot and then Class 1 on the other, which also gives me a sense that